and welcome back to Adam's Fam Anime. I am John, and today I'm going to be reviewing One Piece chapter 1019. This week's chapter seems to be titled Heliceratops, which I'm assuming is the combination of the words helicopter and triceratops, which is relevant seeing as how this chapter is mainly dealing with Franky's fight with Sazaki. However, before we get to that amazing fight, I think it'd be best to go ahead and address the color cover page we get this week, also a few other things that occur before we check in with Franky and Sazaki. So first, the cover page, and it is just amazing. Hands down, one of my favorite color cover pages so far. It seems like the cover page's theme revolves around whale sharks, and I feel like this cover page could have been much more appropriate and well-timed if it had been published alongside the last chapter, when Jinbei defeated, or seemingly defeated, Who's Who. Because if you didn't know, Jinbei is a fishman of the whale shark variety. And in reference to the amazing detail in this color cover page, all of the Straw Hat Pirates look amazing. And I suppose I want to also address some of the fun details from this color cover page that we got this week. First of which starting is Franky's hair, which has been molded into the shape of a whale shark, complete with its own set of eyeballs. Also, Franky's shirt seems to be pretty funny. It either says that you can steer or you gangsteer. Well, it's kind of hard to tell with the angle that we get on the cover page, but either way, it's still clever wordplay because Jinbei is their helmsman, hence the steering. And another funny detail is if you look at the whale shark that Sanji and Zoro are riding, Sanji's holding up a plate of watermelon that seems to have toppings. But if you look carefully at Zoro's plate, his watermelon hasn't been topped at all, which really emphasizes how Sanji typically puts more thought and effort into making food and plates and presentation for the females that he cooks for. And yet still, another fun detail is the fact that everyone in this page is riding whale sharks. Luffy and Usopp in particular are riding Jinbei, who also is a whale shark. So with that being said, I typically enjoy most of the color cover pages that One Piece and Oda put out. This one in particular, though, has to be among one of my favorites. So now we can get on with the actual content of the chapter. And as previously mentioned, we're going to talk about Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro before we can get on with the Sazaki and Franky fight. The discussion of the monster trio won't last horribly long because we only get about 2 pages total that address the 3 of them and what they've been up to. And we see within the first couple panels of the chapter that Queen actually has the ability to shoot his lasers in quick succession, similar to rapid fire. Now, Sanji does note when seeing the rapid fire laser that Franky would probably love to get his hands on that tech. Now, as much as I would love to discuss that, I think it's best that I save that for a future video. Now, when it comes to Zoro and Luffy, they're pretty much in the same situation. We get about 1.5 pages in regards to them too. With Zoro, he's still with the 2 minks, Tristan and Miyagi, and they seem to be having trouble administering the instant recovery shot to Zoro. So I suppose we really only get a couple panels of that just specifically for Oda to show us that, hey, Zoro is still in the process of coming back. But we also check in with Luffy and we get to see that Luffy has regained consciousness, but he seems to be asking for meat. So I guess in regards to Zoro being unwrapped and Luffy being fed, we can wait a good while, or at least bounce around with other events going on in the rebellion before we check back in with those 2 or see them fully recovered. And this is totally okay with me. It would seem that we've already seen the result of the fight between Jinbei and Who's Who. It looks like in this chapter that we see the result of the fight with Franky and Sazaki. We still have Black Maria, Brooke, Robin, and a few other people to check in with before we really move forward. I still would like to see what's going on with Marco, the remainder of the Big Mom Pirates, and also King. But with the conclusion of Sanji and Queen also, I wouldn't mind seeing all of those fights concluded before Luffy and Zoro return to the fight. Honestly, I'd even be fine if we get a full Kaido and Yamato flashback before Luffy returns to the fold. So moving on to the meat of the chapter, we see that a headliner is setting up a little bit of exposition for us to let us know that Franky's fight is now going to be one-on-one in a very similar fashion to what we saw with Jinbei. And before the fight really kicks into gear, we get a little bit of I guess, just respects from each character about their resilience and their toughness, just before we get to see Sazaki transform into his hybrid form. And when he does this, you can see that there is a V-shaped cut on his stomach. And you can also see a little bit in the panel that his belly and his rib cage have two different types of scaling or skin. But before Franky notices that, he actually gets to see a technique from the hybrid form, and it is the namesake of the chapter, heli triceratops, or helicopter triceratops. So to be quite honest, I don't really know what this body part of a triceratops is called, but once I looked it up, it is labeled as a bony frill. But in any case, Sazaki spins it around his neck and propels himself into the air, apparently. And despite it looking hilariously ineffective when combined with his sword, which has a trick mechanism apparently called the screw sword, and for the most part it really just shows us some protruding blades coming off the side of his swords, and then the sword somehow is now spinning to create a screw effect. And when that's been combined with the Heliceratops move, it seems like he pretty much wipes out all of the defectors of the armor core. And I will say that I like how Franky is his usual self and instantly befriending anyone who helps him or assists him, because he shows himself to be a little upset after they get attacked. Anyways, that specific attack ends with Franky intercepting the blade with his own sword and then deflecting it off to the side. And when Sazaki lands, he spins his Heliceratops thing again, but instead of flying, he uses it to move himself backwards to get enough momentum for an attack called the Bullet Triceratops, which is basically just a high-speed rush attack, to which Franky blocks with his General Shield. Now it seems that when the attack connects, it sets off Franky's shoulder rockets. I'm not 100% sure what that is or how effective that is toward the fight. Maybe it was just an excuse to create an explosion. I mean, the explosion itself doesn't really affect either person negatively. Not that it matters too much, because Franky actually grabs a hold of Sazaki and hits him with the General Suplex. The sequence of panels for this move in particular are well thought out. However, they're not really well drawn, in my opinion. I guess I'll address that during the ratings portion of the video. Anyways, the slam gets Sazaki's head stuck in the ground, and that's when Franky notices that his stomach wound is bleeding pretty profusely. And when he sees this, he goes for a move called V for Victory Flash. However, right before it hits, Sazaki uses his Heliceratops move to shoot upwards and out of the way. Sazaki then charges up to use the Bullet Triceratops move again, but before he can hit that, Franky hits him with a portable version of his General Cannon. The beam seems to do significant damage to Sazaki. It even shoots him up into the air. At this point, Sazaki realizes that Franky might have the upper hand, so he rationalizes that he might as well try to take them both out with a diving kamikaze move. The move is called Magnum Ceratops, and it connects with Franky's armor, but just before that happens, Franky seems to eject out of the tank armor and then line himself up for his attack, the Franky Radical Beam. We then get a beautiful panel of the move connecting, and it would seem that Franky has finally defeated Sazaki. And with that fight being done, the last two pages are dedicated to Yamato and Kaido. And similar to a couple previous chapters, it seems like a lot has transpired since the last time we checked in with the two. Yamato is looking fairly roughed up. Kaido doesn't really seem to be too damaged. Now, we do get a little bit of dialogue that indicates that Yamato's devil fruit wasn't necessarily intended for her, but that Kaido did actually put in a good amount of effort to acquire that specific fruit. And in terms of Momonosuke and Yamato's similarities, we get another one added in the sense that he didn't intend on consuming the fruit. It was an accident because they were hungry. The same way Momo consumed his dragon fruit because he was hungry. He didn't know it was a devil fruit, or even an artificial devil fruit. Anyways, on the last page, we get two amazingly drawn panels showing us Yamato's face and his full form. Now, a lot of people are speculating that it is a fox. I tend to agree with that. Now, we all know that Katarina Devon already has the Inu Inu no Mi model Kyuubi, which allows her to transform. That being said, after a little bit of research this afternoon, I found that there is a fox god by the name of Inari Okami. And with that being said, foxes in particular are seen as sacred or paranormal to a lot of lore and mythos in Eastern Asia. And some of those lores say that the Kyuubis were messengers for Inari, which is the fox god. Now, the interesting thing about this, and probably what sells me the most on the Inari bit, is that the Inari god or goddess could be viewed as both male and female, which fits Yamato perfectly. So with that being said, my official guess on Yamato's unrevealed devil fruit name is going to be the Ino Ino no Mi Model Inari Okami. Now, I'm sure that most of us assume that the fish fruit, Kaido has the rarest form of it. I think it's possible that Yamato's fruit is the rarest form of any Inu Inu no Mi. And considering that foxes are considered sacred or paranormal in many cultures, it's possible that the Inu Inu no Mi has a high rate of mythical Zoans. Now, that fruit model name is not official. I suspect it'll probably be a while before we get the official name of her fruit or his fruit, but that is the end of the chapter. So I suppose now we can get on with the rating. So my rating for this chapter's artwork is going to be an 8. I would have rated it a 6 or a 7, but the last two panels in particular were drawn incredibly well. My reasoning for giving it a lower rating than 9 or 10 is because with the Franky and Sazaki fight, we get a lot of panels that were zoomed out or zoomed in. So we get a couple well-drawn panels, but we also get a couple blurry panels that have some perspective issues. Overall, the chapter still had good artwork, just not quite what I would have hoped for a chapter centered around Franky and one of his fights. So that's going to be an 8 there. But moving on to story, I'm going to go ahead and also give that an 8. The story wasn't really amazing. We mainly just got the fight, which is perfectly fine with me. We do get a little bit of backstory on Yamato's devil fruit. We don't get it elaborated on. We finally get to see the devil fruit, and we get to check in with the monster trio. So the story was consistent. It was well done. It's just not anything amazing or mind-blowing. So I feel that 8 is more than fair. Now moving on to hype, I'm going to go ahead and give that a 9. Now my reasoning for such a high rating in terms of hype is going to be because the fight was amazing in terms of its choreography and its originality. Not to mention the last two panels gave us some hype in regards to devil fruit and backstory in regards to Kaido and Yamato. So for me, it's going to be a solid 9. The only thing keeping me from giving this a perfect 10 in terms of hype is the fact that we really had no progression with Luffy and Zoro and Sanji, despite having gone straight to them in the beginning of the chapter. Also, when it comes to the fight in this chapter, we see a lot of reused moves, and with the high frequency of breaks recently, I feel like Oda could have taken a little more time to flex his imagination for this fight. So, when we use the average of those 3 ratings, that means that I'm going to give this week's chapter an 8.3. Overall, a great chapter. I mean, there's still some questions I think we'd want answered, like whether or not Sazaki is Kokoro's son. I know a lot of the One Piece community believe that to be the case, and I hope that there is a little more dialogue, seeing as how Franky was a tad bit respectable to his opponent in this fight. Also, I'd totally be okay if we just left Luffy and Zoro out of the story until we could actually get them back in the fight. I understand the whole purpose of leaving them out for the time being. It's a good way to not distract from the resolution of all the other fights that are going on, or maybe setting everything up for the final act of Wano. And also, I hope that we aren't repeating the trend of a few chapters prior where we just check in with Kaido and Yamato only to have the action that occurs off-screen until 2 or 3 chapters later. I kind of feel like it's a cop-out or an unnecessary hype build for them to end a chapter checking in with those two, show us something cool, and then just completely disregard it for another chapter. I mean, this one was a little bit better in the sense that we finally got the reveal for Yamato's devil fruit, and it's not quite what I think most people expected, but it is interesting. So with that being said, let me know in the comment section down below if you agree with my Inu Inu no Mi Model Inari theory, or just comment if you're down for a little bit of One Piece discussion. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, or if you want to see more content like this. Now, I know that we're on break this week, but I will be dropping another One Piece related video here within the next couple days. In any case, thank you guys for tuning in. I am John from Adam's Fam Anime, and I will catch you guys in the next video.